Lie to Diep. I will take you to find your parents. No matter what happens in life, I will always be by your side.
Thank you, James. James is always by my side when I am most miserable.
Hello everyone, wishing you all good health and peace in life. We can search the world for success, but the longing for family, for where we come from, never truly fades. For years, Diep lived with a quiet ache in her heart, a question she never dared to ask out loud. Where did my parents go? She never had the answer, only fading memories and the empty spaces they left behind. But when James, the man who loved her without conditions, discovered a truth hidden beneath layers of silence, even he was stunned. And he knew then this wasn't just her journey, it was their journey. So he took her hand, and together they set out to search for the people who gave her life. Will they find them? Will the past finally return, not with pain, but with peace? Sometimes, the greatest gift love can give is helping someone find where they truly belong. The rain had just stopped. A faint mist still floated over the hills, and the muddy ground beneath Diep's feet made soft, sticky sounds as she stepped out into the garden. She stood there for a moment, staring into the distance as the golden sun pierced through the clouds. Something in her heart was not quite right, and she didn't know why. Inside the house, James was speaking to her mother. He had just returned from the city with a new batch of paint samples for the house. He was designing for Diep. He tried to stay cheerful, making jokes about color tones and villagers' preferences for darker shades of brown. But his eyes kept drifting toward the window, toward where Diep stood, motionless. That morning, a man from Diep's past had shown up at their farm, Pau, her former husband, someone she never thought she'd see again. But he wasn't the same man she once feared. He no longer looked wild or drunk, nor did he carry the arrogance he used to. He looked gentle, regretful, and with trembling words. He had told her something that shattered the foundation of everything she believed. "Your parents, they're not dead, Diep," he had said, his voice barely audible. "They're alive. They've always been." At first, she thought he was lying. She laughed, then cried, then screamed. For 20 years, she had lived believing she was an orphan, abandoned and forgotten. She had been sold to his family when she was just 12. She had grown up wearing second-hand clothes, eating leftover food, and hearing the world remind her that she had no one, no roots, no origin, just pain. And now this, inside, James sat still as Diep finally told him everything. Her hands trembled, her voice cracked. "James, I don't know what to believe, but if there's even a 1% chance that they're still alive, I need to know." He didn't hesitate. He took her hand and said, "Then we'll find them, together." The next morning they left. James canceled all his meetings. The company was already struggling. A shady investor had recently pulled out from a critical hydropower project, and the company was bleeding. But James didn't care. Some things were more important than business. Diep was more important. Their journey led them deep into the northern provinces, across dusty roads and forgotten villages. They visited old orphanages, hospitals, churches, even government offices, searching for any record of Diep's birth. Most people shook their heads. Some didn't even let them in. But one woman, an elderly nun in a faded white robe, remembered something. "I think I remember her," the nun said. A little girl with quiet eyes. Her parents, they begged us to take her in during a difficult time. They never came back. Diep's heart sank. That wasn't good enough. She needed more. She needed names, dates, a trace. In a small district office, after hours of pleading, they finally found a document. Faded, almost illegible, but there, 2 names. Nguyen Van Keen, Lathi Hoa. Her hands shook as she read them. Keen. That was her uncle's name. Was it possible? Could he have hidden her identity all these years? They rushed back to the village. James was silent during the ride, his jaw clenched, knowing what this might mean. That the man Diep trusted as family may have been the one who severed her from it. Confronting her uncle was not easy. At first, he denied everything. Then, slowly, his face collapsed into sorrow. "I did it to protect you," he whispered. "Your parents were poor, sick, and they were being chased by debt collectors. They gave you to us, and then disappeared. I thought if I told you the truth, you'd go looking for them. You were just a child, so you lied to me for 20 years. Diep's voice was sharp, broken. You let me grow up thinking I had no one. "I'm sorry," he said, but sorry wasn't enough. The next weeks were filled with fragments. One neighbor remembered seeing a woman named Hoa in a distant village. Another thought Keen had once sent money to someone up near the border. Clue by clue, thread by thread, they followed the trail. Finally, in a tiny house near the Laos border, they found her. An old woman, her hair white, her hands wrinkled, stood at the door. She looked at Diep with a stare that felt like silence and thunder all at once. "Are you Hoa?" Diep asked, her voice cracking. The woman nodded slowly, "Yes." "And you, are you my daughter?" There was no music, no slow-motion movie scene, just the raw truth of two broken souls recognizing each other. They cried, they talked, and finally, Diep learned the truth. Her parents had fled to survive. Her father had died years ago from an untreated illness. Her mother had lived quietly, selling herbs, living in shame, always believing her daughter would never forgive her. Now, in that dusty house, forgiveness was all that remained. James stood quietly outside, tears in his eyes. This was Diep's moment, but in his heart, he felt something shift. He had helped her find her origin, and in doing so, he had found something too, a love that was stronger than blood, than money, than past wounds. Later that evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Diep turned to James and whispered, "Thank you." He took her hand and smiled. "This is only the beginning." Diep didn't let go of her mother's hand for a long time. They sat on the old wooden bench, faces bathed in the golden afterglow of sunset. As years of silence began to crumble under the weight of truth, her mother, Hoa, spoke slowly, as if afraid that the words might break Diep even further. "I thought about you every single day," Hoa said, "every time the wind blew through the trees. I wondered if you were warm when the rains came. I worried if you had a roof over your head, but I didn't dare go looking. I had nothing to give." Diep listened, tears flowing down her cheeks. She wanted to be angry. She wanted to scream, to shout, to ask why. But none of that could undo the past, and none of it would bring her peace. Instead, she simply said, "You could have come. I didn't need anything, just you." Inside her chest, it felt like something long buried was finally being uncovered. Not joy, not yet, but a quiet understanding. a chance to begin again. Later that night, James walked into the dimly lit room where Diep was sitting alone. Her eyes were red, but calm. "She wants me to stay a few more days," Diep said, looking at the floor. I think I need to." James nodded. "Of course, I'll stay with you." She looked up at him, her voice softer now. "You don't have to. Your company, it needs you. Everything's falling apart." James walked over and sat beside her. "Let it fall for a little while. I'll rebuild it." "But I can't rebuild you, Diep. Only you can. And I'll be right here when you do." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Diep leaned her head on his shoulder. It was the first time in days she felt safe enough to rest. 3 days later, they said goodbye to Hoa. The farewell was bittersweet, not the end of something, but a fragile beginning. Her mother promised to visit the village soon, to meet the people Diep loved, and perhaps to finally become a part of her life. As they drove back through winding mountain roads, James reached for Diep's hand. "What will you do now?" he asked. "I'm not sure," she replied. "But for the first time in a long time, I feel whole." James smiled. "Maybe now you can finally stop running from the past." "I think so," she nodded, "and start building something real." Back in the village, things had changed. The paint samples for the house were still on the table. The design sketches had been updated. James had quietly worked on them during their journey, adding touches of warmth of home. One evening, James brought her to the field where the house would be built. Fireflies danced in the tall grass. The moon hung low, and gentle ... He took out a small box. "I wasn't going to rush this," he said, "but after everything we've been through, I realized we don't have forever. We just have now." He opened the box, a simple ring, nothing fancy, nothing grand, just sincere. "Will you marry me?" To Diep, she looked at him, this man who had carried her through storms, who had asked for nothing in return, who had stood beside her not only in light, but in all her darkest shadows, and she smiled through her tears. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times yes. Months later, the house was finished. It wasn't just a house, it was a symbol of survival, of truth, of forgiveness, of love. Hoa came to live nearby, slowly learning to be a mother again. James' business, once on the brink of collapse, recovered after he exposed the fraud behind the investment sabotage. A man named John, once trusted, now revealed. But more than success, James found peace, and Diep, after a lifetime of loss, finally found family. And when they stood on their porch, hand in hand, watching the sunrise over their fields, they both knew this was home, and they had found it together. The story of Diep and James teaches us a powerful lesson. No matter how painful the past may be, healing begins the moment we face the truth with courage and love with sincerity. Diep grew up believing she was alone, abandoned by her parents, and unworthy of love. The pain of her childhood shaped the way she saw the world, with fear, hesitation, and self-doubt. But when the truth came to light, she found that healing was possible, not because the past was erased, but because she finally confronted it and chose to forgive. James, a successful CEO, also teaches us something profound. Success is not just measured by business achievements, but by the willingness to stand beside someone in their darkest hour. He chose compassion over convenience, love over pride, and presence over profit.